But what of the one self, immutable, immobile, eternally free, with which the Gita began? That is free from all change or involution in change, vikarya, unborn, unmanifested, the Brahman. Yet it is that by which all this is extended. Therefore, it would seem that the principle of the Ishvara is in its being. If it is immobile, it is yet the cause and lord of all action and mobility. But how? And what of the multiplicity of conscious beings in the cosmos? They do not seem to be the Lord, but rather very much not the Lord, Ansha, for they are subject to the action of the three gunas and the delusion of the ego sense. And if, as the Gita seems to say, they are all the one self, how did this involution, subjection, and delusion come about? Or how is it inexplicable except by the pure passivity of the Purusha? And whence the multiplicity? Or how is it that the one self in one body and mind attains to liberation, while in others it remains under the delusion of bondage? These are difficulties which cannot be passed by without a solution.
Right. GT, are you there?
Yes, Anmol, yes.
Would you like to read?
Yeah, 1 minute. Give me a minute. My foot's. I'm out of the meeting again. I don't know what's happening.
No, you are there in it. I can see you.
Yeah. I am there, but I want to read on my iPad, and
Okay.
it just went away. Now it's okay. Thank you.
This one. The Gita answers them.
Yeah. The Gita answers them in its later chapters by an analysis of Purusha and Prakriti, which brings in new elements very proper to a Vedantic yoga, but alien to the traditional Sankhya. It speaks of three Purushas, or rather a triple status of the Purusha. The Upanishads, in dealing with the truths of Sankhya, seem sometimes to speak only of two Purushas. There is one unborn of three colors, says a text. The eternal feminine principle of Prakriti, with its three gunas ever creating. Oh God, again it's gone. So, Anmol, can you hear me? But I can't read it on my iPad now.
I can hear you.
Yeah, but I'm reading on my iPad and I'm connected to my phone for my ears.
Do you want me to ask somebody else to read?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Dhaval bhai?
हाँ योगेश अरे अनमोल भाई मैं पढ़ता हूँ नो
Please,
प्रॉब्लम
please, Dhaval bhai.
हाँ just I will read from the book instead so
No
because
problem. Please read.
My phone is my iPad is connection is a little poor.
The Gita answers them in its later chapters by an analysis of Purusha and Prakriti, which brings in new elements very proper to a Vedantic yoga, but alien to the traditional Sankhya. It speaks of the three Purushas, or rather, a triple status of the Purusha. The Upanishads, in dealing with the truths of Sankhya, seem sometimes to speak only of two Purushas. There is one unborn of three colors, says a text. The eternal feminine principle of Prakriti with its three gunas, ever creating. There are two unborn Purushas. There are two Purushas, of whom one cleaves to and enjoys her. The other abandons her because he has enjoyed all her enjoyments. In another verse, they are described as two birds on one tree, eternally yoked companions, one of whom eats the fruits of the tree, Purusha, in nature, enjoying her cosmos, the other eats not, but watches his fellow, the silent witness, withdrawn from the enjoyment. When the first sees the second and knows that all is his greatness, then he is delivered from sorrow. The point of view in the two verses is different, but they have a common implication. One of the birds is the eternally silent, unbound self or Purusha, by whom all this is extended. And he regards the cosmos he has extended, but is aloof from it. The other is the Purusha involved in Prakriti. The first verse indicates that the two are the same, represent different states, bound and liberated, of the same conscious being. For the second unborn has descended into the enjoyment of nature and withdrawn from her. The other verse brings out what we would not gather from the former. That is, that in its higher status of unity, the self is forever free, inactive, unattached. Though it descends in its lower being into the multiplicity of the creatures of Prakriti and withdraws from it by reversion in any individual creature to the higher status. This theory of the double status of the one conscious soul opens a door, but the process of the multiplicity of the one is still obscure.
Right. Thank you, Dhaval bhai.
Thank you, Anmol bhai.
Just seeing और किसने join किया है क्या? Okay, Harish has joined, Aditya has joined. Okay. Yeah, so we'll now read these two together. जो भी इसमें है, we'll try to extract. Okay. So,
Can
same,
we,
but हाँ,
can we read another para?
we can actually and we should, but फिर इसमें वो दो references हैं उपनिषद वाले. I think it's better that we read third one. मेरे को भी यही दिमाग में आ रहा था.
हाँ, मेरे को भी यही आ रहा था अनमोल
हाँ
भाई, क्योंकि
हाँ
बहुत
हाँ.
रिलेटेड है ये
अर्चना
सारे.
जी, अर्चना जी.
Yes, I'll read.
Thank you, Archana ji.
No, it's not very long. So
No, it's not. No, it's not. To these two, the Gita.
Yeah. To these two, the Gita, developing the thought of other passages in the Upanishads, adds yet another, the Supreme, the Purushottama, the highest Purusha, whose greatness all this creation is.
One
whose
second.
greatness-
There's a footnote here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please read Purusha.
Purushaha, Akshar,
It's
Aksharat,
Aksharat.
Aksharat,
Paratah
Parata,
Paraha.
Parata Paraha, Parata
Paratah
Paraha.
Paraha.
Parata Paraha. Purushaha Aksharat Parata Paraha. Although the Akshara is supreme, there is a supreme Purusha higher than it. There is a supreme Purusha higher than it, says the Upanishad.
Yeah.
The supreme, the Purushottama, the highest Purusha, whose greatness all this creation is. Thus, there are three, the Shara, the Akshara, the Uttama. Shara, the mobile, the mutable, is nature, Swabhava. It is the various becoming of the soul. The Purusha here is the multiplicity of the divine being. It is the Purusha multiple, not apart from, but in Prakriti. Akshara, the immobile, the immutable, is the silent and inactive self. It is the unity of the divine being, witness of nature, but not involved in its movement. It is the inactive Purusha, free from Prakriti and her works. The Uttama is the Lord, the supreme Brahman, the supreme self, who possesses both the immutable unity and the mobile multiplicity. It is by a large mobility and action of his nature, his energy, his will and power that he manifests himself in the world, and by a greater stillness and immobility of his being that he is aloof from it. Yet is he, as Purushottama, above both the aloofness from nature and the attachment to nature. This idea of the Purushottama, though continually implied in the Upanishads, is disengaged and definitely brought out by the Gita and has exercised a powerful influence on the later developments of the Indian religious consciousness. It is the foundation of the highest Bhakti Yoga, which claims to exceed the rigid definitions of monastic philosophy. It is at the back of the philosophy of the devotional Puranas.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. So we were talking about the Purusha, the main shloka 13.23, Upadrashtanumanta cha bharta bhokta maheshwarah paramatmeti chapyukto dehe asmin purushah parah, right? And then after talking about all that for the last 2-3 paragraphs, obviously, because as we said, we are standing at 2.39 in the Gita, Esha te behita sankhye buddhir yoge tvimam shrunu buddhya yukto yaya partha karma bandham prahasyasi. Okay. So from 2.20, from 2.11 to 2.30 is basically the talk of the self, either the self in its unborn form, what Sri Aurobindo calls central being in his letters on yoga, or the self when it has taken up a human body properly, that is called Shariri or Dehi in that case. But basically, in those 20 verses, it is about that self that we are talking about, right? So, naturally, to connect back to the thread with which, the essays on the Gita is linked to the main Bhagavad Gita text, Sri Aurobindo raises the question, but what of the one self, okay, immutable? The Sanskrit word is akshara, okay, immobile. Where does the word akshara come from? 11 to 30 in second chapter. I think it does come somewhere. Oh, thoda dhoondna padega. It is there, I think, somewhere it is there. Immobile is certainly there. Achaloyam, achala. कहाँ पे गया? It is there. नित्यः सर्वगतः स्थाणुः अचलोऽयं सनातनः. That is in 2.24. Eternally free. So, yeah, the word Nitya Mukta as such is not there, or the word even Mukta is not there in those verses, but the idea is implied. Okay, it is beyond birth and death and like that. So, eternally free. Eternal ke liye there are words, Nitya, Shashvatah, etc. But what of the one self, immutable, mane unchanging, immobile, that in which there is no movement, eternally free, with which the Gita began. This is the description of our true being. It is immutable, it is immobile, it is eternally free.
So the Jivatman, right? Which we have been studying so
Yeah,
far. Amol bhai.
that is what is called Jivatma. Correct. Or in English, in integral yoga, it is called the central being. But to reflect on this, just to dwell on this. It is immutable. It does not undergo any change. Okay, it is ever the same. Again, looking at our own lives, because everything, unless and until we relate it to our own consciousness, what is the use, right? So at some point or the other, in our lives, we can feel something within us which is sort of like a witness to all the changes that are happening, but it itself is not changing. It is ever the same, right? So when in such moments, basically, it is the awareness of this immutable part of our being. This is our true being, which we are getting. Okay? Immobile. So it is immobile, it is perfectly still, and yet it is that on which all the movement goes on. But basically, वो हिलाया नहीं जा सकता. It is like, it cannot be disturbed in any way that way. It is immobile. It is perfect stillness. See, this is what the Purushottama consciousness resolves. The Kshara, which is mutability, and the Akshara, which is immutability, वो उन दोनों को reconcile करता है. Okay. And basically, the perfect silence or perfect stillness is the complement or base of a perfect activity. The deeper will be the immobility that we have achieved within ourselves, in that proportion will be the efficiency of our action in the world. Okay. This much for the word immobile. Eternally free. So we were never bound. This we are not talking about something else. The word is self. Self, main, khud. Right? That is what self literally means. Myself. This is what we're talking about, ourselves, our true self. This is what we truly are. And any yoga sadhana will have at least some component of chintan, manan, etc. on this aspect. Immutable, immobile, eternally free. The self is forever and perfectly free. It was never bound. It can never be bound. And therein goes the whole kick. Then who is to get mukta? वो अलग चीज है. Psychic being is here and वो सारा उसमें आएंगे gradually. But basically eternally free, with which the Gita began. That is free from all change or involution in change. Involution माने self hiding, involve हो जाना. Involve is the opposite of evolve. वो इंग्लिश का वो इन्वॉल्व नहीं वैसा वाला कि किसी एक्टिविटी में इन्वॉल्व हो गए. दैट इज ऑल्सो ऑब्वियसली सेम मीनिंग, बट इन्वोल्यूशन हियर इज द ऑपोजिट ऑफ एवोल्यूशन. सेल्फ कंसीलमेंट, दैट इज व्हाट द वर्ड इन्वोल्यूशन मीन्स. सच्चिदानंद, लाइक वी डिड इन दिस थिंग सांख्य, राइट, कि जो पुरुषोत्तम है, दैट पुरुषोत्तम's manifesting power is what is called in the Bhagavad Gita the Paraprakriti. That is what is called the mother in integral yoga by Sri Aurobindo. That Paraprakriti, in turn, its executive power by which it executes things is what is called Aparaprakriti, lower nature, or simply it is called nature in English with a capital N. उस नेचर का वो अव्यक्त स्वरूप है, unmanifest form of that energy, entire energy packed and self-contained but not yet manifested. That is the avyaktam among the 24 elements of the Sankhya. 24 matlab principle, sorry, not elements. And then gradually, so like from Purushottama, Paraprakriti. Now don't think that Paraprakriti is inferior to Purushottama. They are one and the same. Without him I exist not. Without me, he is unmanifest. But since the Bhagavad Gita is a Vedantic scripture and that dwells on the what is called the masculine aspect of creation, that is why we begin with the Purushottama. That is why we say like this, कि Purushottama then Paraprakriti. हाँ धवल भाई.
ये जो you last time said Aparaprakriti is the executrix of Paraprakriti, correct?
Yeah.
But in Sankhya, the Avyaktam is not still the Paraprakriti. It is a part of Aparaprakriti.
Yeah, correct. That's what I said.
Right?
हाँ.
Okay. Yeah.
वो
Just
actually there's a
confirming.
very fine line between the para and the apara. Acha, one thing very important to understand, because we are mental beings. Essentially, we are spiritual beings who are having a mental and a physical experience. That is from the spiritual point of view. But in truth, as we live moment to moment, we are mental beings trying to rise towards a spiritual consciousness, right? So we tend to break things up. So creation में कहीं पे, listen very carefully and understand. Nowhere in the creation is there any break as such. कहीं नहीं है, हो ही नहीं सकता है, because it is that one infinite. उसी वन इन्फिनिट का वो सेल्फ इन्वोल्यूशन है या वो सेल्फ अनरोलिंग है, दैट्स इट. उसकी ग्रेडेशंस चेंज होती रहती हैं, बट देर आर नो ब्रेक्स इन क्रिएशन. द क्रिएशन इज वन होल कंटिन्यूम, वो कंटिग्यूअस है, उसमें कहीं पर भी कोई ब्रेक नहीं है. अविभक्तम च भूतेषु विभक्तम इव. It is indivisible. It appears divided. That appearance is what is called, Maya. Right? So
Yeah, no, I understand that part. Ki it is a continuum from positive infinity to negative infinity in that sense. But what I was asking is Pradhana, or what we read in the earlier
Avyakta.
or the Avyakta of the Sankhya is still the apara.
it is the para, and again to prove it, कि why it is the apara. So if you take verse number 13.6, ठीक है,
हाँ,
महाभूतान्य अहंकारो बुद्धिरव्यक्त
हाँ,
विगत
हाँ,
होगा. That is
हाँ.
a expansion of the verse in the 7th chapter, verse number 4, where bhumirapo nalo vayuhu. In that the elements are said to be part of the ashtadha prakriti. ठीक है,
Okay. हाँ,
क्लियर.
हाँ,
भूमिरापो नलो वायुः खम मनो बुद्धिरेव च
हाँ,
अहंकार इति यमे भिन्ना प्रकृतिर अष्टधा. So
हाँ.
these 5 elements and man buddhi ahankar are part of the 8-fold prakriti. And
Correct.
then he says apareyamitasvanam iyam apara. ये
हाँ.
अपरा है, this is lower, right?
And know my
And
other prakriti
simply
as
if you do
हाँ,
mathematics, so
हाँ.
you take the 8 of this and the 24 of that verse, और आप उसकी कॉमन मैपिंग करें सेट थ्योरी के हिसाब से, there is an overlap. So obviously if there is an overlap, that means the 24 being talked about is also the apara prakriti. Very,
Correct,
very
correct.
simple.
नहीं, वो तो बराबर है. So
Then
then
that's it.
that confirms that. Okay,
Then
cool,
that
cool.
confirms that. ये confirmation
Yeah.
हमने पहले भी किया था, ठीक है,
हाँ.
right? तो confirm हो गया. तो पुरुषोत्तमा para prakriti, then the apara prakriti. Of that apara prakriti, the most subtle form is that avyakta. ठीक है, that avyakta then becomes कैसे उस फॉर्म में आता है,
व्यक्त में.
नहीं वो व्यक्त तो होता है, बट हाउ डज इट गेट व्यक्त. सो द प्रोसेस इज, अगर आप एलिमेंट्स के सेंस में बोले नॉर्मली, अभी
हाँ,
मैं
हाँ.
वो महत और बुद्धि और अहंकार वगैरह का बात नहीं कर रहा, सिंपली इन टर्म्स
समझ
ऑफ
गया.
सब्सटेंस. ठीक है, सिंपली इन टर्म्स ऑफ
Objective
सब्सटेंस.
universe. You're talking.
करेक्ट,
हाँ,
करेक्ट,
objective.
ऑब्जेक्टिव यूनिवर्स. सो दैट अव्यक्तम, first it becomes ether, then it becomes vayu, then it becomes fire, then it becomes water, then it becomes earth, like that.
The
That
Pancha
is
Mahabhut.
that हाँ पंच महाभूता, बट दैट इज द ग्रेजुअल इन्वोल्यूशन. इसके अंदर वो इन्वोल्यूशन हो रहा है, ये समझना चाहिए, बिकॉज
Correct.
इज द
Correct.
सटल मोस्ट एंड देन मोर
हाँ, क्यों
ग्रॉस, मोर ग्रॉस, मोर ग्रॉस, मोर ग्रॉस.
क्रिएशन नीचे उतर रहा है
ये जैसे
बेसिकली.
है द ह्यूमन बॉडी, ठीक है.
हाँ.
सो द ह्यूमन बॉडी इज बेसिकली अर्थ. ओके, दिस अर्थ, दिस इज हाउ दैट ब्रह्मन, मैंने एक और उसमें डाला था, ब्रह्मन इज नॉट ओनली द cause and supporting power and indwelling principle of the universe, he is also its material and its soul
हाँ.
material. ये उसका
Correct.
एकमात्र मटेरियल है ब्रह्म. तो वो ब्रह्म ये बना कैसे, ठीक है. This is how the involution happens as far as materialization is concerned. Okay, this is just basically to have total clarity in mind what the word involution means. Involution in change, that is free from all change, or involution in change, avikarya. Again this word comes, वहां पे आता है 2:11 से 2:30 के बीच में,
हाँ.
अविकार्यो
अविकार्यो
यस्य
हाँ.
कस्माद् एवं विदित्वैनं नानुशोचितुम् अर्हसि,
मरहसी.
है ना. हाँ, 2.25 में आता है अविकार्य. लास्ट टाइम आपने मेंशन किया था, तो आई सेड कि वेट, द वर्ड विल कम इन अनदर वर्स. ठीक है,
हाँ, करेक्ट, करेक्ट.
अगेन अनबॉर्न.
अजो.
हाँ, 2.20 अनमैनिफेस्टेड, अव्यक्त, ये बाद में आएगा. अव्यक्तादीनि भूतानि व्यक्तमध्यानि भारत 2.28 में आएगा अनमैनिफेस्टेड. द वर्ड इज अव्यक्त. ठीक है, द ब्रह्मन. Yet it is that by which all this is extended.
येन सर्वमिदं ततः.
ये न सर्वम, ततम नहीं, ततम है, ततः नहीं है, ततम है.
हाँ.
ततम मीन्स एक्सटेंडेड. ये फ्रेज इनफैक्ट गीता में 3 जगह आता है. अभी यहाँ गूगल में 2 दिखा रहा है, 217 एंड 1846. एक जगह और आता है, आई थिंक इन द 9th चैप्टर. ये न मीन्स बाय विच. ठीक है, सर्वम ऑल, इदम दिस, ततम एक्सटेंडेड. ततम और तनु जो वर्ड है फॉर द बॉडी, उनका रूट सेम है. द रूट इज तन. तनोति. तनोति मतलब बढ़ना, एक्सपैंड करना. तो ततम उसका पार्टिसिपल फॉर्म है. ओके, ये न सर्वम इदम ततम. Once more, because this is very, very profound and should be read very meditatively and with a reference to oneself. Otherwise, as I am saying, there is no point. अगर इसका हमारे पे हम रेफरेंस नहीं कर सकते, there is no point. Okay? What of the oneself, immutable, immobile, eternally free, with which the Gita began. ये तीनों हमारे adjectives हैं. Immutable, immobile, eternally free. That is free from all change, वही immutable, और involution in change, अविकार्य, unborn, unmanifested. Unmanifested माने उसके अंदर की जो संभावनाएं हैं वो अभी व्यक्त नहीं हुई हैं. They have not become apparent. It is hidden. Unmanifested means hidden. Okay? The Brahman. Yet it is that. ये सब कुछ होते हुए भी वो immutable है, immobile है, etc., etc., unmanifested है, unborn है. Yet it is that by which all this is extended. Yeah.
That is,
Avinashi.
nothing is possible without the Brahman, which is
No, no.
unmanifested.
That is the base of everything.
Which
That
is
is the base.
unborn.
You
That
could
is
take the
base
example of that
everything.
spider which is given in the Mundak Upanishad. So the world is like the body of the spider. It is the self projection. ठीक है, बट जो वो कोर है उसका, जहां से वो एक्सटेंड होता है, without that initial thing, how could the extension have been in the first place? हो ही नहीं सकता ना, because the web is the extension of the body of the spider. Something like that. Clear? आप कुछ कह रहे हैं अरोड़ा जी? नहीं, बोलिए, आवाज कम आ रही है थोड़ा.
Oh, 1 minute.
हाँ
There is a Puran which is titled Brahma Vaivarth Puran,
हाँ, करेक्ट
and it is the same thing what you are explaining.
करेक्ट करेक्ट. वैवर्त का मतलब वही है, उसका
वैवर्त
विवरण,
means
उसका एक्सपेंशन, एक्सटेंशन.
coming out and going in, something
Yes.
of that sort. But interestingly, the
हाँ.
description of Radha
हाँ,
comes profusely in this Puran only,
राइट
not in Bhagavad Puran.
राइट राइट
Okay, that is just an information.
राइट राइट राइट. या राइट राइट. सो yet it is that by which all this is extended. यहां पे जो रेफरेंस होगा that will be to 2.17. अविनाशी तो तद्विद्धि येन सर्वम इदम ततम विनाशम अव्ययस्यास्य न कश्चित् कर्तुम अर्हति. Therefore, it would seem that the principle of the Ishvara is in its being. If it is immobile, it is yet the cause and lord of all action and mobility. इसका क्या मतलब है? This means कि it is not constrained to remain immobile. It is not constrained to remain unborn. It is not constrained to remain unmanifested, etc. ये अलग बात है कि even though it is born, we are all births of that only. But even being born, it remains unborn because that reality has the power and potency to retain its true status even when it undergoes change. And that reality is ourselves, basically. Tattvamasi, right? But यहाँ पे जो वो कहना चाह रहे हैं कि it would seem that the principle of the Ishvara is in its being. उसकी जो सत्ता है उसके अंदर ईश्वरत्व का जो तत्व है, प्रिंसिपल है, वो अंतर्निहित है. Okay? If it is immobile, it is yet the cause and lord of all action and mobility. Because ये न सर्वम इदम ततम, सब कुछ उसी के द्वारा एक्सटेंडेड है, राइट? इसका मतलब उसके अंदर कोई एक ऐसी चीज है जो अपने अंदर से सारी चीजों को एक्सटेंड कर सकती है और उनके ऊपर कंट्रोल रख सकती है. क्लियर? बट हाउ? हाँ धवल भाई बोलिए.
तो यहाँ पर ये इन्होंने जो ईश्वरा वर्ड यूज किया, दैट इज सेम एज सेंट्रल बीइंग in this context, right?
एक second. Therefore, it would seem that the principle of the Ishvara is in its being. Yeah, you can say that. You can say that.
कि फिर does he mean Purushottama here? By which
Ishvara
all
और पुरुषोत्तम भगवत गीता में they are used interchangeably.
interchangeably. Okay, so in this context, it would be more precise
यहाँ
to say
पुरुषोत्तम वर्ड को मत लेके आओ.
हाँ,
Don't bring it
okay.
right now.
हाँ,
See, try to understand. ठीक है, try to understand.
हाँ.
यहाँ पे बस वो ये कहना चाह रहे हैं कि even though it is immobile, unmanifested, unborn, avikarya, etc., still the principle of Ishvara is there in it. And it is because of that that it becomes capable of this self-extension. ठीक है? If it is immobile, अब आप ये सोचो ना कि वो immobile है. अगर वो immobile है तो extend कैसे हो गया? Extension का मतलब ही movement है. Isn't it?
नहीं, अभी समझ गया. ये जो आपने लाइन बोली ना कि it is still the Brahman, but
Yes.
it has a principle of ईश्वरा. ईश्वरत्व उसके अंदर है.
Lordship का principle उसके अंदर है.
हाँ.
ठीक है, आगे पढ़ते हैं. If it is immobile, it is yet the cause. But how?
This is a very
Just look at it, how
paradoxical
he's
thing,
doing.
no?
But sorry?
I
GT,
said
couldn't
it's
get you.
very paradoxical, yet
Yes.
it is.
Yes.
I said
Exactly.
it is very paradoxical,
Yes.
yet it is like
That paradox will be ultimately
base,
explained by the concept of Purushottama in the 15th chapter. यहाँ पे उसका थोड़ा सा हिंट मिलेगा आने वाले 2 पैराग्राफ्स में. Clear? Our life is a
So, Anmol bhai,
paradox with God for
we
key.
say, can we
Another
say that
sentence from
Ish-
Savitri. हाँ धवल भाई बोलिए.
can we say that Ishwaratva is inside the Brahman with this? Yeah.
You can say that.
Okay.
You can say that. So जो paradox word जीती ने बोला, so there is this line in Savitri, our life is a paradox with God for key. So it is a fact that until that God consciousness is touched, everything is paradoxical. Paradox of life is not resolved without the discovery of that divine consciousness. And that discovery has to happen within one's consciousness. कहीं ना कहीं उसका glimpse मिलना चाहिए. Which is why the absolute necessity of some kind of, क्या बोलना चाहिए, intense sadhana to get a glimpse of it. Okay? आगे बढ़ते हैं. But how? And what of the multiplicity, मतलब how is that concept of Ishvara there in it? वो कितना threadbare करके चल रहे हैं, just try to appreciate how in such a threadbare way Sri Aurobindo is going about it. And what of the multiplicity of conscious beings in the cosmos? They do not seem to be the Lord, but rather very much not the Lord. Anisha. For they are subject to the action of the 3 gunas and the delusion of the ego sense. वही ahankara vimudhatma. And if, as the Gita seems to say, they are all the one self, all of us are the one self. This is the basic Siddhant. We read it in the Isha Upanishad, right? They are all the one self. How did this involution, subjection, and delusion come about? Or how is it explicable except by the pure passivity of the Purusha. Yeah. One minute. They do not seem to be the Lord, but rather very much not the Lord. Anisha, we can all see it in our lives. How much part of our life or circumstances are we having total mastery over? Not very much. Even if it is there to a great extent, some part is not in our control, right? For they are subject to the action of the three gunas, हमारा खुद का व्यवहार, behavior, okay? And the delusion of the ego sense. So in other words, the more we get rid of the delusion of the ego sense, the more will that true Ishwaratva start manifesting in life. And if, as the Gita seems to say, they are all the one self, how did this involution, subjection, and delusion come about? Or how is it explicable except by the pure passivity of the Purusha? प्योर पैसिविटी से एक्सप्लेन हो जाता है, उसका कोई रोल ही नहीं था, तो फिर प्रकृति में जो हुआ सो अपने आप होता रहा. It can involve to any extent, it can become subject, it can become deluded, because the Purusha is passive that way. ठीक है? He's just building the argument. And whence the multiplicity? Whence मतलब कहां से? संस्कृत में बोलते हैं कुतः, from where? And whence the multiplicity? Or how is it that the one self in one body and mind attains to liberation? अगर एक ही self है, if the self within me and the self within all of us is the same, then if I get liberated, everybody else should get liberated, na? Because the self is one. Or how is it that the one self in one body and mind attains to liberation, while in others it remains under the delusion of bondage? We read those one paragraph from the Life Divine, wherein he explains that when a person gets liberated, then a liberated soul reproduces itself in similar liberated consciousnesses, just as an animal reproduces itself in animal bodies, right? That is a sign actually. If on coming in contact with a spiritual master, let's say, one is not feeling some sense of liberation, okay, most likely then that person is not really a liberated being. जो ट्रूली उस लिबरेटेड स्टेट को प्राप्त कर गया है, उसके टच से आपको वो लिबरेशन फील होगा ही होगा. वी नीड नॉट गो एनीवेयर एल्स. वी हैव श्री अरविंदो हियर. How we are told to read his books by the mother. Do not read it too much with the mind. Read it silently. Let the consciousness imprint itself on you. The Shakti behind the words imprint itself on your consciousness. The awakening illumination will arise from within. But whenever we read, if you read this book alone individually, you will feel that certain liberating effect. But यहाँ पे वो उल्टी चीज बोल रहे हैं because he's building the argument. Okay? But it's a very important point. The ultimate point is to get liberated from, sadness and sorrow and misery and ignorance and all that. Sri Aurobindo's books, reading of his books, especially something like the Gita, which all Indians are familiar with at least to some extent, it is one of the easiest ways of getting out of a confused sort of state or anything like that. How is it that the one self in one body and mind attains to liberation, while in others it remains under the delusion of bondage? These are difficulties which cannot be passed by without a solution. Okay? Then he gives a solution in the next two. Somewhat solution he gives. The Gita, answers them in its later chapters by an analysis of Purusha and Prakriti, which brings in, so the Prakriti is analyzed in the 14th chapter. जो त्रिगुणात्मिका प्रकृति है ना, रजस तमस सत्व, वो पूरा का पूरा. 13th में भी there are elements, but वहां पे language अलग है. वहां पे the language is क्षेत्र and क्षेत्रज्ञ. Basically क्षेत्र is prakriti and क्षेत्रज्ञ is the purusha. Okay? 13th chapter में. The Gita answers them in its later chapters by an analysis of purusha and prakriti. Again मैं गुणास की बात करूं तो मैंने जैसे डाले थे कि 18th चैप्टर में ये वर्सेस हैं गुणास के लिए, 17th में भी हैं. आई हैड नॉट पुट दोस वर्सेस, ऑल दैट इज देयर. पुरुषा का एनालिसिस जो है दैट इज देयर इन द 15th चैप्टर. 3 टाइप्स ऑफ पुरुषा, which brings in new elements very proper to a Vedantic yoga but alien to the traditional Sankhya. It speaks of 3 Purushas, or rather a triple status of the Purusha. Very important. It is actually triple status of the one and only Purusha. That is how the problem of oneness is resolved. It speaks of 3 Purushas. 15.16 यहाँ लिखा है, द्वाविमौ पुरुषौ लोके क्षरश्चाक्षर एव च क्षरः सर्वाणि भूतानि कूटस्थोक्षर उच्यते उत्तमः पुरुषस्त्वन्यः परमात्मेत्युदाहृतः यो लोकत्रयमाविश्य बिभर्ति अव्यय ईश्वरः. These are verses number 16 and 17 from the 15th chapter. द्वाविमौ पुरुषौ लोके, 2 are the purushas in this world करके, और फिर अगले में जब वो बात करता है उत्तमः पुरुषस्तु अन्यः. So in these 2 verses, it for the first time speaks of the triple status of the Purusha. It speaks of 3 Purushas, or rather a triple status of the Purusha. Now, the Upanishads, in dealing with the truths of Sankhya, seem sometimes to speak only of 2 Purushas. There is one unborn of 3 colors, says a text. The eternal feminine principle of Prakriti with its 3 gunas, ever creating. This is, to my knowledge, from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Ajam ekam, like this it starts, the verse. और वो उसमें red is for rajas, black is for tamas, white is for sattva. These are the 3 colors. वो वर्स मैंने पहले भी 2-3 बार शेयर किया. I don't remember the full verse. Ajam ekam, like this it starts. Do you want me to pull the verse? I mean to read it here? I'll have to find it out. Should I?
Let us not break the continuity.
Okay, fine. So there is one unborn of 3 colors, says a text, the eternal feminine principle of Prakriti with its 3 gunas, ever creating. गीता में भी ये आता है कि the Prakriti also is beginningless. प्रकृतिम पुरुषम चैव विध्यनादि, बड़ा ई वाला है उसमें क्योंकि वो द्विवचन है. उभाव अपि, उभाव मीन्स बोथ. गीता में भी आता है. Why I am saying this? Because sometimes we have a tendency, too much Vedantic mind, Purusha wala mind, to think that the Purusha is eternal, but the Prakriti is not eternal. No, sir. Both are eternal, categorically, the Gita says. 13th chapter में आधा वर्ष है. प्रकृतिम पुरुषम चैव विध्यनादि उभावपि. ठीक है? So there is one unborn of 3 colors, says a text, the eternal feminine principle of Prakriti with its 3 gunas, ever creating. वो कभी create करना रुकती ही नहीं है. Ever creating. There are 2 unborn, 2 Purushas, says a text. There are 2 unborn, 2 Purushas, of whom one cleaves to and enjoys her. The other abandons her because he has enjoyed all her enjoyments.
अनमोल भाई,
हाँ जी.
before this there is one unborn ka statement. There are two sentences which seem to give us the entire, Sri Aurobindo seems to give us the entire evolution from Sankhya's multiple Purusha down to two and then further down to one of the Gita.
How?
From meaning reconciling into the triple status.
हाँ.
In that sense,
Yeah.
he is implying that there is only one Purusha, but उनके इसके Purusha के three poises है, as we had.
Yeah, correct.
So he is giving us the entire map here कि
Yeah.
how multiple becomes two, then two becomes one.
Yeah, correct. So this is the verse. It's from Shvetashvatara Upanishad, because वो दूसरा वाला पार्ट भी आया पुरुषा वाला. Chapter number 4, verse number 5. अजाम एकाम लोहित शुक्ल कृष्णाम बह्वीः प्रजाः सृजमानाम स्वरूपाः. This part covers the prakriti. Ajam ekam, that is why aja, जो बड़ा आ का मात्रा आया है, that is for the feminine. Ajam ekam lohita, lohita means red, shukla means white, krishna means black, respectively for the rajoguna, sattva and tamoguna. Ajam ekam lohita shukla krishnam bahvih prajah सृजमानाम स्वरूपाः. सेकेंड पार्ट में अजो ह्येको जुषमाणो अनुशेते जहात्येनम भुक्त भोगाम अजो अन्य. एक दूसरा अनबॉर्न है, दैट इज द पुरुषा, जिसमें जुषमाणो अनुशेते जहाति एनाम भुक्त भोगाम, एक बार उसके भोगों को भोग लिया है तो फिर वो जहाति गिव अप कर देता है. अजो अन्य, दैट इज द अदर अनबॉर्न. वो इसका सेकेंड पार्ट. There are two unborn, two Purushas, of whom one cleaves to and enjoys her, the other abandons her because he has enjoyed all her enjoyments. This is from the Shvetashvatra. Next, in another verse, they are described as two birds of one tree. Two birds of one tree, eternally yoked companions, of whom one eats the fruits of the tree. Yeah. The Purusha in nature, enjoying her cosmos. The other eats not, but watches his fellow. The silent witness, withdrawn from the enjoyment. When the first sees the second and knows that all is his greatness, then he is delivered from sorrow. Now, इसका वर्स मुझे याद है. I think it is there in the Kathopanishad. द्वा सुपर्णा सयुजा सखाया समानम वृक्षे परिशस्व जाते तयोरन्यः पिप्पलम स्वादुवत्ति अनश्चनन्यन अभिचाकशीति. अभिचाकशीति means just to witness. फिर से बोलता हूं, it's a very beautiful verse. द्वा सुपर्णा सयुजा सखाया. Sayuja means eternally companion. Dva means two. Suparna means beautiful of wing, माने birds. द्वा सुपर्णा सयुजा. सयुजा यहाँ पे लिखा था ना वर्ड, yoked, eternally yoked. युजा means जुड़ा हुआ. द्वा सुपर्णा सयुजा सखाया. सखाया means companions. द्वा सुपर्णा सयुजा सखाया. द्वा सुपर्णा सयुजा सखाया समानम वृक्षे, on the same tree, परिशस्व जाते, उस पे ड्वेल करते हैं, परिशस्व जाते. तयोरन्यः, तयोह मीन्स ऑफ द टू, अन्यः मतलब वन. तयोरन्यः पिप्पलम स्वादु अत्ति, उनमें से एक जो है वो उस फ्रूट को, फ्रूट इज हियर कॉल्ड पिप्पलम, स्वादु टेस्ट, अत्ति मीन्स एंजॉयस. द्वा सुपर्णा सयुजा सखाया समानम वृक्षे परिशस्व जाते तयोरन्यः पिप्पलम स्वादु अत्ति अनश्चनन्यन. एक और दूसरा है अनश्चनन्यन अभिचाकशीति. यहां तक कवर होता है कि वो विटनेस करता है. जब वो पहला वाला दूसरे को देखता है एंड इट ऑल्सो गेट्स फ्रीड. इफ यू वांट आई कैन शो दैट वर्स. वो अगला ही वाला वर्स होगा, बट मे बी आई कैन put it on the group later on as it pleases the group. I think I'll share it later on. ठीक है? Idea is basically clear what he's trying to say here. वो जो दो पुरुष की बात, जो क्षर और अक्षर की बात हो रही है, वो यहाँ पे वो इस तरह कर रहे हैं. The point of view in the two verses is different.
More
But they, हाँ बोलिए.
small, just why Sri Aurobindo has used the phrase that he is delivered from sorrow.
Sri Aurobindo has not used it. He is simply translating the verse of the Upanishad.
Okay.
ये उनका खुद का नहीं है. अगर वही तो मैंने इसीलिए कहा कि अगर आप चाहें तो
नहीं,
मैं
नहीं,
वो वाला
वो
वर्स
समझ-
निकाल के दिखा देता हूँ.
नहीं, I understood, but it means that thought of suffering and death,
Yes,
etc., and
of
sorrow.
course it is there. It is there in the Upanishads also.
Hmm.
Why do you think the Isha Upanishad tells you not to commit suicide? I'm very speaking very bluntly. But Isha Upanishad के दूसरे वर्स में कुर्वन् नेवेह कर्माणि जिजीविषेत् शतम् समाह, you should wish to live 100 years. ये वो बोलने की जरूरत क्यों पड़ रही है उसको? Because कहीं ना कहीं the nature of human life being what it is, the jijivisha sometimes goes away. So that, I mean, element of sorrow and all, that is the starting point of yoga for a lot of people. Gita में Arjuna Vishada Yoga, right? Yeah. Then he is delivered from sorrow. हाँ.
Carry
The
on,
point, the point of view in the two verses is different, but they have a common implication. One of the birds is the eternally silent, unbound self, capital S, or Purusha, capital P, by whom all this is extended. And he regards the cosmos he has extended. In fact, मतलब वर्ल्ड के लिए, दुनिया के लिए, कॉस्मोस के लिए, द मोस्ट कॉमन संस्कृत वर्ड इज लोक. ठीक है? वो जो लोक का शब्द है उसका जो धातु है, अगर आप संस्कृत में जाएं, इट इज लोक धातु. और लोक का मतलब होता है देखना. उसी से कम्स द इंग्लिश वर्ब लुक, LOOK. इट इज दैट फैंटास्टिक. संस्कृत इज दैट फैंटास्टिक. बाय होम अवलोकन बोलते हैं ना. अवलोकन मतलब देखना. By whom all this is extended, and he regards the cosmos he has extended, but is aloof from it. The other is the Purusha involved in Prakriti. That bird which is eating the fruit of the tree. Right?
अनमोल, ये
हाँ.
जो टू बर्ड्स की एनालॉजी दी हुई है,
हाँ.
this is basically trying to say that every human being
हाँ.
has these two kind of whatever you may use inside your
हाँ.
being, and
हाँ.
one is silent
हाँ.
and the other is chirpy and enjoying, but that silent thing which is the base
Hmm.
on which the whole thing, the whole existence
Yeah.
or the body or हम जो enjoy करते हैं,
हाँ.
मतलब एक साइलेंट नेचर भी है और एक ऊपर भी नेचर है which is enjoying the nature, but
Yeah.
without the silent nature nothing would happen. As
Yeah.
you have said about the given the analogy, you talked about the Brahman, which
Yeah.
is immobile, immutable, yet everything is coming from it,
Everything is the self extension of that Brahman.
of that. So
जब
is it
extend
correct?
करने को कुछ होगा ही नहीं तो extend क्या होगा?
हाँ, so am I understanding correctly?
Yes, yes. Yes. And I've just in between, while you were speaking, वो जो दूसरा वाला वर्स था इसमें, for the beauty of the Sanskrit and slightly for the completeness of the session, तो पहला वाला था द्वा सुपर्णा सयुजा सखाया समानम वृक्षे परिशस्व जाते तयोरन्यः पिप्पलम स्वादुवत्ति अनश्चनन्यन अभिचाकशीति. दिस इज फ्रॉम द मुंडक उपनिषद. वो शायद कठा और मुंडक दोनों में है, बट जो मेरे को अभी गूगल में मिला है, दैट इज फ्रॉम मुंडक. नेक्स्ट, समाने वृक्षे पुरुषो निमग्नो अनिशया शोचति मुह्यमानः. ठीक है? जुष्टम यदा पश्यति अन्यनम ईशम अस्य महिमानमीति वीतशोक. ऑल इज हिज ग्रेटनेस. ये सब उसकी महिमा है और फिर वीत शोकः, इट इज डिलीवर्ड फ्रॉम सॉरो। मुंडक उपनिषद में 3rd चैप्टर का वर्स नंबर 1 बोल रहा है ये। या मैं डाल दूंगा बाद में रेफरेंस में, डजंट मैटर। द पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू हमने कहां तक पढ़ लिया है? बट इज अलूफ फ्रॉम इट, या द फर्स्ट वर्स इंडिकेट्स दैट द टू आर द सेम। फर्स्ट वर्स माने जो श्वेताश्वतर उपनिषद वाला था, अजाम एकाम, वो वाला जो था। उसमें पुरुष और प्रकृति को बेसिकली क्या बोलते हैं? अच्छा हाँ, उसमें जो वो पुरुषा बताए हुए हैं, देर आर टू अनबॉर्न, टू पुरुषा ऑफ whom one cleaves to another, the other abandons her. 1 second. The first verse indicates that the two are the same, represent different states, bound and liberated of the same conscious being.
Wow, look at this.
Hmm.
States. He's translating this to states. Very
Yeah.
clearly here
Yeah,
is.
yeah. Correct. The first verse indicates that the two are the same, represent different states, bound and liberated of the same conscious being. Okay. For the second unborn has descended into the enjoyment of nature and withdrawn from her. He is referring to this part जो मैं भी highlight कर रहा हूं screen पे, ये वाला. Okay. The second unborn has descended into the enjoyment of nature and withdrawn from her. Okay. The other verse brings out what we would not gather from the former, that in its higher status of unity, the self is forever free. Vita Shoka, wo wala jo verse hai. The other verse brings out what we would not gather from the former, that in its higher status of unity, the self is forever free, inactive, unattached. क्योंकि दैट पिप्पलम स्वादुवत्ति और दूसरा वाला अनश्चनन्यन, वो उसको नहीं खाता। अनश, अश का मतलब होता है एंजॉय करना, अशनन माने एंजॉयमेंट, हैविंग एंजॉयड। अनशनन मीन्स डज नॉट एंजॉय। द सेल्फ इज फॉर एवर फ्री, inactive, unattached, though it descends in its lower being into the multiplicity of the creatures of Prakriti. वो कैसे आया दो इट डिसेंड्स वाला? बिकॉज इटर्नली योक्ड कंपेनियंस। भले ही वो ऊपर वाला ऊपर रहे और वहां से वो नीचे वाला बर्ड आया है, बट दे आर इटर्नली योक्ड। स युजा, स मीन्स परफेक्टली, स जोड़ने से वो और परफेक्ट हो जाता है। स युजा, नॉट जस्ट युजा, मे बी दैट इज हाउ। Inactive, unattached, though it descends in its lower being into the multiplicity of the creatures of Prakriti and withdraws from it by reversion in any individual creature to the higher status. This theory of the double status of the
Anmol
one
bhai.
conscious soul opens the door, but the process of the multiplicity of the one is still obscure. वो अगले वाले उसमें बोला हुआ है उन्होंने, it is through the prakriti, para prakritir jiva bhuta, it is the higher nature which becomes the jiva.
Anmol bhai, I have a small inquisitiveness.
बोलिए।
The principle of the principle or story or legend of Nar Narayan,
हाँ,
is it can we apply here or no?
नहीं नहीं, बिकॉज नर नारायण इज, बोथ ऑफ देम आर विद इन यू, उनमें से कोई भी ऊपर नहीं है, इसलिए नहीं। नारायण इज द डिवाइन एलिमेंट विद इन यू, इट इज द परह पुरुष विद इन यू, एंड नर इज योर मनोमय पुरुष, दैट इज वाई। आप उसको वो लूजली लिंक कर सकते हैं, लूजली अगर करना चाहें तो, कि जो नरा है, जो ह्यूमन एलिमेंट है वो उसके अंदर पूरी तरह संलिप्त है प्रकृति में, और उसकी वजह से उसको ये सारे अनुभव वगैरह हो रहे हैं। पर वो नर नारायण के कॉन्सेप्ट में बेसिकली द कॉन्सेप्ट इज दैट ऑफ द डिवाइन एंड द ह्यूमन बीइंग टुगेदर इन द ह्यूमन सिस्टम। नारायण की जो एसेज ऑन द गीता में जो बार बार नारायण वर्ड आता है 7 or 8 times, नारायण इज द संज्ञा ऑफ द डिवाइन विद इन यू। और यहां पे वो जो दूसरे बर्ड की बात हो रही है, जो ऊपर है वो विद इन नहीं है, वो अबव है। दैट इज व्हाट इज कॉल्ड जीवात्मन और सेंट्रल बीइंग। इज इट क्लियर? अरोड़ा जी?
All right. Okay, okay.
ओके। बट
अनमोल
उसमें
भाई,
भी आई मीन जो कॉमन लिंक है दोनों में वो ये है ऑब्वियसली कि दिस नॉलेज और अवेयरनेस दैट द नारायण इज विद इन मी, ही इज माई कॉन्स्टेंट कंपेनियन। गीता में भी 5th chapter में लास्ट वर्स जो है, सुहृदम सर्वभूतानाम, ही इज द फ्रेंड ऑफ ऑल क्रीचर्स वगैरह। तो दैट इज लाइक द पॉइंट ऑफ लिबरेशन कि if you try to even simply by the japa of the word narayana, अगर आप तुल जाओ नारायण 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 like that, you will get free from the movements of nature, and आपका नारायणत्व है, ईश्वरत्व है, उसके अंदर आपकी चेतना स्थित हो जाएगी। So that is the common link between the two, but terminology wise it's not the same thing. हाँ धवल भाई।
I would like to note here this part. मुझे जो moment I read this, the first verse indicates that the two are same, represents different states, bound and liberated. मतलब ये हम दो हमारे अंदर ही है।
Exactly.
हम जब चाहे तब ये दो स्टेट के बीच में
Exactly.
switch कर सकते हैं,
Exactly.
is the implied implication.
Exactly. We, by our own sweet will, choose to be bound. We, of our own sweet will, choose to be bound. In fact, most of the time, we are pretending to be bound. We are not really bound. अगर हम ये नाटक करना बंद कर दें, I mean, I'm reminded, Nirod Baran, one of Sri Aurobindo's great disciples, and Sri Aurobindo, उनके बीच में the correspondence is very humorous. Perhaps the most humorous side जो Sri Aurobindo का निकल के आया, that has come out there. So he's a doctor and he's studied in England and all, तो इन सब ideas से वो थोड़ा कट गए हैं। तो he's like, I am not able to understand what is Brahman. Can you tell me what is Brahman? Sri Aurobindo state, you are Brahman. You are pretending to be Nirod.
अच्छा, oh,
It hits you.
yeah,
You
yeah.
are Brahman. You are pretending to be Dhaval. You are Brahman. You are pretending to be Archana or whatever.
Yeah,
You
no, so going from states, moment you use the word, Sri Aurobindo uses the word states, it implies that you can switch between the state, just that we are not doing it.
exactly. अब मैं एक वो 3 pairs of words मैं बोल देता हूँ. It is, I mean, deserves to be said and deserves to be remembered. That's why I'm saying it here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ignorance is the play of knowledge, the
Mm.
concealment of itself in itself. Weakness, the play of power, the concealment of itself in itself. Blisslessness, the play of bliss, the concealment of itself in itself. This is from
Wow.
the English translation of a Sanskrit writing by Sri Aurobindo. It is called Sri Aurobindo Upanishad. ये उसके एंड में आता है। ये पहले भी शेयर किया गया था ग्रुप पे।
हाँ, हाँ.
I'll share it again. Once more, I'll repeat. Ignorance is the play of knowledge, the concealment of itself in itself. Weakness is the play of power, the concealment of itself in itself. Blisslessness is the play of bliss, the concealment of itself in itself. We pretend to be ignorant. We pretend to be weak. We pretend to be sad and blissless. It's not the truth. Well, the simplest example of this is children. If you deny them something they don't get, immediately they will shrink and howl and shout and this, oh, kya hua? And the moment they'll start laughing. What is that? It was a pretense. And that is how all human beings are. In the core, everybody is that divine child, isn't it?
Yeah.
9.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah.
Already 1 hour. We won't be able to do the 3rd paragraph today.
No,
But
no,
that's
no.
okay.
Let's not rush. No, this is really.
अनमोल, जो आपने अभी
हाँ.
बोला है
Yes.
क्या बोलते हैं, अभी जो आपने बोला, ignorance is the
Ignorance is the play of knowledge,
play of
the
knowledge and
concealment of itself in itself.
self. And वही आस्तिक और नास्तिक का भी तो आ सकता है. You can, because
Yeah.
I've heard this somewhere. जो आस्तिक हैं, जो
Sri Aurobindo
नास्तिक
says
हैं,
it,
sorry,
like this. Yes. The
जो
atheist
नास्तिक
is
हैं,
God playing at hide and seek with himself, he says.
yes, I've heard this also. This can also be, referred to here.
This correct, exactly. Very well said. Thank you. So ये श्री अरबिंदो के एक aphorism में है. So the atheist is basically God playing at hide and seek with himself. Because God के अलावा तो कुछ नहीं है. But वो खुद होते हुए भी खुद को डिनाई कर रहा है, मैं ही नहीं हूं, मैं ही नहीं हूं. Like that. बट उसमें वो फिर अगला पार्ट भी उसका बड़ा अच्छा है. Because you should not be a blind theist. You should strive for experience. But is the theist any other? Perhaps because he has clutched at the shadow of God. कुछ इस तरह से है कि जो theist होता है, who simply believes that God is there, ठीक है, he is better than the atheist because he has some faith and all. But वो भी केवल मान के बैठ गया है, उसको अनुभव नहीं है. So you have to go beyond both theist and atheist and become a yogi. Tasmat yogi bhavarjuna. You have to experience God. This is what the Gita wants. The Gita does not want us merely to have Shraddha that Shri Bhagavan exists. Okay, that Shraddha comes by reading the Gita, good. But that's not the aim of the Gita. The aim of the Gita is to make you dwell consciously in the state of that divine. Yeah. Anybody else has any question?
No, I'm reminded of that very first fourth chapter we read, no? Gita wants you to dwell in God and God's state, the two master
Exactly.
conceptions
Master
of
conceptions of the Gita. Exactly. Core of the
And-
teaching mein hai ye.
core of the teaching. Yeah.
Anmol,
Yes.
I was wondering if we could have an open session, like something like we can discuss what we observe around and what we feel like after reading or understanding
Yeah, we can do
all
it.
that we've done.
Yeah,
तो
yeah.
हम
It
जब
was in my mind
आसपास
also to
देखते
have an
हैं,
open session and just to discuss without the
हाँ,
reference of the text. We can do it, yeah.
हम जैसे देखते हैं आसपास में, समझते हैं, बड़े सवाल आते हैं, दिमाग में.
What we
So,
can do is अपना ये मंडे और फ्राइडे ये गीता के लिए फिक्स रखते हैं, ठीक है? एनी ऑफ द अदर डेज जो बाकी हैं, संडे है, ट्यूसडे है, थर्सडे है, तो उसको हम फिर फ्री रखेंगे और उसमें कोई टाइम लिमिट भी नहीं होगा. मतलब 1 hour हो सकता है, 1.5 भी हो सकता है.
we'll
That
do
way
it
there
after
will
the
be a
10th.
free flowing discussion and some problems can be resolved.
And after the 10th, we will do 10th of June.
Okay,
Next
I'll
month.
raise a poll for that.
Hmm.
And after 10th,
Because
whenever you
before,
want, we
yeah,
can.
after 10th, yeah.
Anybody else has any questions? Otherwise, we close with silence for today. Okay. We'll close with silence. 1 minute.